there's a lot of growth and development happening in the City of Charleston's District 5 area, which covers the Outer West Ashley area and parts of Johns Island. Today, I talk one-on-one with Charleston City Councilman Karl Brady Jr., who represents District 5 for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. City of Charleston Councilman Karl Brady Jr., welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks for having me back, Quintin. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you greatly. Needless to say, you have served as Charleston City Council member for District 5, representing the Outer West Ashley area since 2019. Of course, I interviewed you when you first ran. So
seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, with all that's going on now these days. So tell me, Councilman, what's new? What's now in District 5?
Yeah, so after redistricting, District 5, Johns Island got put off into District 3, and so District 5 starts kind of at Wapu Road and goes down on the riverside of Savannah Highway, and then jumps across at Croghan's Landing to Carolina Bay, and then it goes from Carolina Bay up to the Walmart on Bees Ferry Road, and then it goes down Savannah Highway out towards the Dodge's Chicken in Red Top. So it got a little longer, but it kind of got thinner in a way. And so, what's new? We've got a lot of commercial development coming to Bees Ferry, which has been kind of a welcome change for folks out here who are getting kind of tired of driving to have to go to different spots to kind of do their daily conveniences. And still a lot of residential development pressure out this way, but we're trying to deal with that as best we can by making sure that developments that aren't going to make things worse don't come out this way. So that's been kind of my priority, focusing on traffic fixes as well as ensuring that some needed infrastructure is coming. The parks referendum passed last November, and as part of that, my district will get its first City of Charleston park, which will be nice.
All right. Okay, so where exactly in the district will that park be located?
So the idea that was put forth in the referendum was in the Bear Swamp neighborhood, which is Bees Ferry and Savannah Highway.
Oh, okay. That's really good. And Councilman, do you know how long it will take for this park to be constructed?
So I know the city hasn't bonded yet because we have to wait till we collect some revenues. So it'll be a couple of years off.
Wow.
But it's exciting having the parks bond be able to actually fund it.
Yes.
So it's not just in the kind of like, oh, we need a park phase. The need's been determined and the funding source has been identified. So I'm hoping that once some revenues come in and we can bond against it, then that'll become a priority.
Yes, sir. And so when do you expect that revenue to actually come in or come online?
My thinking is it usually takes a couple of years because you have to wait for the assessments to go out that come out with your property tax bill.
Sure.
So it'll probably be, I would say, probably another year or two for the funding to start really flowing in, and then we can start bonding against that.
Yeah, and so when this park does come up online, Councilman, what exactly will residents of that area and the rest of the city of Charleston expect at this park?
So I think it'll be like a lot of our similar city parks, but obviously it's got to go through a design phase and make sure that the programming that can be put on the property is able to be there. So there's still some design and that type of thing that's got to go into it. But I'm just excited that people express the need for a park out here, and the city's able to answer that call.
Yeah, that's amazing. And from a city council standpoint, when do you expect RFPs to go out?
That's a great question. So, we got to identify the funding source, bond it, and then once we get that done, then it can go into the design phase. So, once all that kind of happens, like there's definitely a kind of dedicated process to it. And I know that some of the other council districts that had some items come up in the parks referendum, they're facing a similar type thing. Like my old part of my district on Johns Island, a rec center was identified as a big need. And part of the parks referendum was to secure funding for a design phase for that. So I know a couple other council members have that type of thing going on as well. But I mean, just for the public to vote for this type of parks investment really shows that people are dedicated to the quality of life here in the city. And, it's a great place for the tourists to come in and visit. And this is an investment that the people are making to make sure that the quality of life stays really good for the people that actually live here.
And so, Councilman, you talk about that investment. So when it comes to the design phase, will that money come from the park referendum and the bond, or will it be something separate?
Yeah, so it'll come from the bonding. Once all that happens.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. And you talk about obviously your district becoming a longer district, but it's kind of shortened in some ways. So now that you have actually redistricted, how many people have actually moved into your district since your district has been redistricted?
I don't have the numbers because the census hasn't come out with the census estimate, but my guess is that this is one of the fastest growing sections of the city between myself and Councilmember Bowden and Councilmember Shealy in the Outer West Ashley portion. I don't have Long Savannah, but Long Savannah is coming. That'll be in Councilmember Bowden's district, but that'll add a significant amount of folks out this way. My district, any residential development that's going up was approved. Right. Some of it well before my time on council. But there's probably been a couple hundred, I would guess, maybe less than 1,000 or so that have moved in so far. But we'd have to wait for the census numbers to come out when they do their estimate.
And you mentioned Councilman, earlier about the needed infrastructure in your area. So where exactly is that right now in your district?
So that's a great question. Roads are a primary concern. As well as just kind of mobility in general. So, one of the things I've been working on since I got elected first in 2019 is sidewalk infrastructure. Obviously, this area, a lot of it was in the unincorporated county prior to some developments coming in and annexing into the city. So, really looking at the Sanders Road corridor, which runs from Bees Ferry over towards West Ashley High School, the new library. My neighborhood, Carolina Bay, has an exit on Sanders, and so a lot of kids use that to go to CE Williams and to West Ashley, and definitely want to make it safer for them. So we secured some funding right at the beginning of 2020, which was March of 2020 was when the world kind of stopped for a bit. So there's been some delays in the county kind of getting that project done because the county's managing it for us. But that's coming. And then in terms of big projects, I was excited to see for the half-cent sales tax extension that expanding Savannah Highway from Dobbins Road to Bees Ferry is being considered. From Dobbins Road to Bees Ferry is being considered as part of the half-cent sales tax referendum because it's 2 lanes in that stretch, and then it goes to 3 lanes as you're heading towards 526. And so, especially with our, friends down in Ravenel that have approved some new developments, there's going to be some more traffic on Savannah Highway, and that type of project would just help add capacity. And, that's kind of been a long time coming. And then there's intersection improvements for safety. I know the county's been considering in that corridor, Dobbins at Savannah Highway being one of them. There's been some fatal accidents there. And then lastly, it was approved in 2016, but their shovels have not gone in the ground yet, much to my chagrin, is the Main at 17 intersection with the flyover there. And so I'm hoping our friends at the county have told us that fall we can expect some movement towards construction on that. And so I'm very much looking forward to that project. I live near that intersection. I know how much of a pain point it is for people. So it's always what I kind of tell people, infrastructure is expensive. It takes a while to get the funding for it. But these projects, the needs have been identified so that the relief is coming. It's just going to be a little bit.
And let me back it up to Dobbins and Savannah Highway. So how many cars will be taken off the road once that particular infrastructure improvement is actually completed?
So I don't think it's necessarily cars coming off the road, but just trying to make that intersection safer. Because there's been some of it has to do with the just amount of cars that come through there, but also, I think it's just human nature as you sit through a light or a delay and you get kind of impatient, some we hope everybody pays attention, and we would expect everybody to pay attention, but we know that's not the case, and sometimes that leads to tragic consequences. So just being able to improve that intersection, light timing's a possibility there, but I know that there are some traffic engineering things that I'm not a traffic engineer, but I know that there's some intersection improvements that they've done successfully at other intersections to make sure that whether it's curb bulb outs or that type of thing, and better turn lanes, better sight lines, that type of thing that people can utilize.
Do you favor roundabouts in your district?
I don't know that there are, just given the size of the roads, when you think of Savannah Highway, Bees Ferry, and Glen McConnell, which are kind of the border roads for me, that a roundabout would work. But I am a supporter in general, especially when I was representing Johns Island. That was something that Councilmember Boykin from the county and I had talked extensively about at some intersections. And as part of the Main and 17 flyover and that entire project, the River Road and Main Road intersection will have a roundabout as part of that. So that light will be eliminated, which has been a pain point for a lot of people. So, not technically in my district, but close enough. But, as part of that project, that'll add significant improvements, because I think, that's just one of the things. And I know that I've worked with Councilmember McBride on this, who took over Johns Island for me. One of the things that's been an issue in South Carolina in general is that we don't have what are called concurrency laws, or the other name for it is adequate public facilities. And so, people often ask, well, why can't we just pause development and wait for the infrastructure to catch up? Well, the problem is that, especially as it relates to roads, there's not a provision for that in state law. So, you can't require the roads to be improved prior to development. But other states have successfully implemented this, Florida being a noted example here in the Southeast, and California being an example out west. And those two states could not be more diametrically opposed politically, but they've both seen the need for making sure that the infrastructure comes first, and then the development is able to go to infrastructure that can handle it.
I know I'm beating a dead horse here, Councilman, and it's probably a redundant, dumb question, but should there be a moratorium on all construction until a comprehensive infrastructure plan can be implemented?
So, part of the interesting part of moratoriums, and I'm not a lawyer, but part of the interesting thing is that in South Carolina, moratoriums can only be implemented. They're generally temporary, and it's while something is being done. So, as an example, Awendaw has a moratorium in place right now on single-family residential developments while they're updating their comprehensive plan. Mount Pleasant has they just extended a moratorium for their zoning code changes, which, again, I'm not a lawyer, but the legality of continuing to extend a moratorium is probably questionable to some people. So it's one of those things that we have to balance, where if the municipality did get sued, the taxpayers ultimately pay for that as well, and especially if you're on the losing end of a lawsuit, that gets quite expensive. So, should a moratorium be in place? I think there's better strategies, and I'll give you an example. There was a property on Bees Ferry Road that wanted to get annexed into the city. Myself and Councilmember Shealy would have preferred that it become a commercial development, because, again, that's what people out this way have really been communicating to us, is that they'd like to see more shops, more restaurants, things that they need to do their daily lives, as opposed to having to travel for it. So it was originally going to be a multifamily residential project. We went and talked with the developer about it, and ultimately they decided not to move forward with that property. So I think you'll see more stuff on that type of level coming around the city, especially as Mayor Cogswell kind of unveils his vision, where we want to we want to make sure that these high density developments, which it should be noted, we have a housing crisis going on, not just in the city, but here in the whole area. So there's definitely still a need for housing stock of many varieties, and that's single family townhouses and apartments. But we need to be more strategic about where we're putting those. Putting a bunch of apartments together on a small road that will create more gridlock. That's probably not a smart use of looking at where to put things. But putting apartments where they're near businesses on major transit corridors that have access to CARTA and multimodal facilities, that probably makes sense. And I don't think that we've necessarily done the best job. Just introspectively, I don't think we've done the best job at trying to guide that the last several years. And so I'm hopeful that, as this continues to move forward, as Mayor Cogswell unveils his vision as we go through the zoning code rewrite that we're currently doing, that will all kind of come to fruition.
Okay. What type of zoning codes would be ideal for your district right now?
So, everything's already zoned if it's in the city, and in the unincorporated areas. But one of the things that I've kind of kicked around in trying to talk to folks, so the zoning code rewrite is really going to focus on elevation-based zoning, and we just voted on a settlement agreement at the last city council meeting to, there's some properties that had some flooding problems, and we were able to come to an agreement with the developer to not have them develop some vulnerable portions of that land. And so the zoning code rewrite is going to focus on the elevation-based portion of development kind of going forward. So in the low-lying areas, it'll be much harder to develop, and it'll really push it to the highlands. And so as part of that, though, in the areas that are higher, you're going to need more density, because now that you can't put things in the low areas, we got to maximize the high, dry areas. And so I think you'll see more of that. But one of the things I've been kicking around is trying to think of, a tool in the toolbox is overlay districts. We have overlay zones downtown. Maybank Highway has an overlay. Folly Road has an overlay. And looking at in areas where we know, like I said, have access to CARTA, have access to mobility, have access to major transit corridors. Maybe that's the spot to put a multifamily overlay or something like that to allow for a little bit more flexibility for folks if there's some properties that aren't necessarily zone multifamily or zone general business where you can do higher density developments. Putting in a little extra layer there that would allow for those, but then it would take away some of that in some of the other areas that don't necessarily need the additional strains on the infrastructure.
So where exactly could density occur in your district?
So I think that's one of the interesting questions, because my district is very, some sections, especially inside 526, are older neighborhoods. Obviously, that's not an ideal spot. And then the newer neighborhoods have already been built out and have multifamily. Carolina Bay has an apartment complex that's in the neighborhood. We have 2 at the entrance to the neighborhood, or 3 at the entrance to the neighborhood. So you've been able to see that. But I think especially up towards West Ashley Circle,
Yes.
Towards the Walmart, there's apartments on Floyd Drive that just got built. But that type of area makes sense because it was designed to, sidewalks are already in place. There's parallel parking on the street around West Ashley Circle. You have the entire Harris Teeter complex just across the street. So you have businesses, you have restaurants, you have grocery stores, you have the Walmart there. There's going to be a Chick-fil-A going there. So you have this kind of district already in place. So that would be kind of the natural spot for me if that was where, some apartments and whatnot tried to go, as opposed to, I think it's no secret to anyone that has talked to me about it. There were 400 apartments built at the intersection of Bees Ferry and Savannah Highway. And that to me was just not a great spot. to strain that intersection when you had the ability, further up Bees Ferry Road that was kind of ready made for, adding some extra residents and the business concentration there.
What other areas in your district are ready to add when it comes to density?
So I mean, honestly, I don't necessarily know that there's much more spots that it should fit out this way. Because I mean, one of the things that we talk about is making sure that we put density, especially near job centers. And this area, there's retail, there's commercial, but there's not a whole lot of office centers or anything like that. And so, I think when I was mentioning that, kind of putting the density where it makes sense, more towards job centers, cutting down on commutes, because that's the thing is the further away that you live, not just the more trip miles for you, but it's more time in the car, which an extra car on the road then begins to add time to everyone else. And so, I think this leads perfectly into an affordable housing conversation that, we've really been striving, and I've been a big advocate for affordable housing downtown is definitely good. But there's other job centers in the area. If you think of, there's offices along Sam Rittenberg, that type of thing, where, putting some affordable units in that corridor, as well as on Savannah Highway, where there's limited opportunities, but some multifamily development could happen there. Being able to get folks closer, because I had someone tell me the story of a teacher in West Ashley really would prefer to live in West Ashley, especially in the Bees Ferry Road area, but just can't afford it. And so they're living out in Walterboro and commuting in because that was the cheapest, the closest in and cheapest that they could go in order to do that. And so, as we think about, and the paper had just published an article about where the affordable units are in the city, as we think about that, we want police officers, we want firefighters, we want teachers to be able to live close to where they work. And most of those starting salaries, qualify for 80% of the AMI units. So, that's one of the things that I've really been trying to look at is making sure that we're putting affordable units, near where people work, but also making sure that they're near job centers so that, if you're only spending 15 minutes, 20 minutes to commute somewhere, that's pretty good. So,
Councilman, do you need affordable housing, or is it really accessible housing?
so I think it's both, because I think they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So you need people to have the ability that they're not paying more than 30% of their income to live somewhere, but also, commute costs are a real thing. Gas, I just filled up the other day for $3.19 a gallon. And luckily I drive a car that gets pretty good gas mileage. But not everyone does, and the further away people live, that's an added cost to them. And so, I think they got to be able to find units that they can afford, and the city has a role to play in that. But we can also put those units, or incentivize for those units to go near where the jobs are. And we're not able to stop people from moving. Obviously, they have freedom of movement in the United States. But with close to 40 people a day still moving to the metro area, net migration, if we keep putting people further out, it is just going to continue to exacerbate the problems that we already have.
What incentives do you want to have when it comes to the affordable housing in the city of Charleston?
Yeah. So, one of the issues that we've kind of had is that, we would like for the density bonuses, it would be 20% affordable units at, either 60% or 80% of AMI, or a blend thereof. But the developers can pay a fee in lieu, so they can, pay the city a lump sum, and then don't have to offer the affordable units. But Spartanburg is doing some really innovative stuff. I was just up there a couple months ago taking a look at their how they in Greenville tackle affordable housing. And Spartanburg's had some really neat, innovative stuff where they actually lowered to 10% the affordability for new multifamily, but they did not offer a fee in lieu. So you either got the density bonus and then had to put in 10%, or there was no density bonus and you had to do it under the existing zoning that it was under. And they said that they have not had, for any new multifamily, everyone has agreed, all the developers that have done it have agreed to do the 10%. So they've seen a nice rise in the amount of affordability. A lot of it's near downtown Spartanburg. And so, that's been pretty neat to go up there and see. And so it leads to the question with the city of Charleston, where if we have somebody paying the fee in lieu and the cost of land doesn't get any cheaper, right? That's well and good, but the discussion I think that we have to have is, do we want the money and have the city doing affordable units, or is it better to get to a point where the developers have enough of an incentive to want to do it themselves? And I think that that's kind of the existential question.
Would you change the zoning to fit these criteria for housing?
I mean, I think it's a conversation that we have to have both with our housing department, the housing authority itself, as well as just sitting with the developers and the community, and really seeing what kind of comes. Because at the rate that we need the affordable units, the current way that we're doing it is just not going to get us there. And so that is kind of what leads me to start asking the question of, if we are going to have areas where we're going to have higher density because of the zoning code changes, should we also then be thinking about, instead of 20% affordability, let's do 10%, but get rid of the fee in lieu, similar to how Spartanburg did, so that as these multifamily developments get built, if it's call it 180, 200 units, 10% of that adds 18, 20 affordability or affordable units. And if we have several of those going in around the city, and now we're talking, 3 or 4 apartment buildings, all of a sudden we're adding 100 units. And I think that that's really, the conversation that we have to have, as opposed to, we pick up 6 here and then we build, the city does 6 over here, just doing it, 5, 6, 7 at a time, just isn't going to get us where we need to go.
This might be an off the cuff question, but with the pace of the city's growth, where exactly is qualified manufactured housing where it could actually be a must for the city of Charleston?
When you say manufactured, are you referring to like mobile homes or that type of thing?
Oh yes, that too. Yes, sir.
So I think there's a lot of potential on the Sam Rittenberg corridor as you look at the aging shopping centers that are kind of down that corridor. And so, I said it on the campaign trail this past November, but those shopping centers were needed when they were built in their day back in the late 70s, early 80s, in a building style where you put the businesses in kind of a like L shape or U shape with a giant parking lot in the middle of unrealized, unutilized space, and that was how development went, for 20 years. But I think as we've seen other areas of the country and other fast-growing areas really start taking a look at redevelopment, having mixed use, having residential incorporated with the retail component, as well as there's opportunities at these shopping centers that get redesigned where you do it the old-fashioned way, where you got retail on the bottom and you can put 2 or 3 stories of residential above. Or you do you can have the apartments kind of in a corner, and then some retail sprinkled around, if you think of Seaside Farms in Mount Pleasant.
Yes.
So there's multiple examples even here in the local area. But that's where I see the biggest way to especially revitalize that corridor. And it may seem counterintuitive, but if we can redevelop or have the developers redevelop those shopping centers, add capacity, add retail, and then with that a tweak to the affordability formula I think there's a lot of potential there, because I just don't see that necessarily happening along Savannah Highway, where aside from a few shopping centers, there's no major kind of large scale developments like that. So that corridor is right for it. It's one I know that I not only look at, but Councilmember Tinkler and Councilmember Waring are also very focused. But that's the other nice thing, right? Is that it's in its own tax increment financing district. Right. So if there is some injection of redevelopment there, that'll add to the TIF district, and then the TIF district can itself fund more improvements like a multi-use path, that type of thing. So, I'm really looking forward to that. That's one of the things that, I think it gets overused a little bit to call it the King Street of West Ashley.
Oh yeah.
But I think that there's an opportunity to make that a very vibrant corridor. That'll be a destination for everyone on this side of the river.
I'm sitting literally 2 blocks away from King Street right now, so I know exactly what that means. Where in your district can redevelopment happen right now?
So I don't know necessarily that, just given that it's a predominantly residential district, aside from kind of the West Ashley Circle area, and then a little bit down towards Red Top where you have Dodge's Chicken and that type of thing. I don't know that there's necessarily a lot of redevelopment opportunity there. But I think the question is, where can we focus in on, as I mentioned earlier, getting the things that people need, because, for every extra retail establishment or commercial establishment we can get in this area, it keeps people off of Glen McConnell. It keeps people off of Savannah Highway. And when the Harris Teeter went in, a lot of people thought that Grand Oaks Boulevard was going to become just a traffic nightmare. And that has not been the case, because what a lot of people end up doing is they'll go to dinner first, so their car's off the road. A lot of people from Grand Oaks take their golf carts over there, so they're not doing heavy vehicles. And so they're utilizing that plaza for several hours, as opposed to just going in, going out, that type of thing. And so with that change in shopping patterns, those people aren't going to Harris Teeter on Savannah Highway, and they're not going to the Harris Teeter on Sam Rittenberg. Right. And so the average trip miles get reduced. And when you do that, it's another car not on one of the major thoroughfares. And so that's really what I've been trying to focus on is, guiding developers that are interested in some of the parcels that are still undeveloped. When they ask, what do folks want? Really trying to make sure that we're getting the best possible product out here in terms of development.
What parcels in your district still need to be developed?
Oh, I wouldn't say need to be.
Okay.
But there's some on Bees Ferry from the stretch right at Sanders Road down to the intersection with Savannah Highway that had previous uses where either the owner's retiring or moving, or they decide that they want to sell, and it's zoned for something that allows for it. And so there's several properties there that I think there's good retail potential. And it's in the county, so it's not in the city, but there's a new retail development that's coming to the corner of Hunt Club and Bees Ferry Road, that'll have medical offices. It'll have a popular sports bar chain going in there. And so, that was one of the things people told me they were excited about was, having a new spot to go and eat with their family that's family friendly. But also, with the medical offices, they may not have to travel as far if they need to go make an appointment or go to the dentist or do that type of thing.
Yes, sir. And I'm thinking about many times walking down Bees Ferry from West Ashley Circle to Johns Island for work. I got to get back out there to do some more marketing work. But, and you mentioned the county and city just recently. How many more people are asking to be annexed into the city of Charleston County?
So that's on just a parcel by parcel basis. So in South Carolina, we have voluntary annexation. There is a forcible annexation, but it's very onerous under the law. The legislature, in their wisdom, decided that, if somebody wants to annex, that they need to make that choice. because there's certain benefits that come with being in the city versus in the unincorporated county. We have different development standards than the county does, so it's a little bit more expensive to develop in the city. But obviously, you get our police and fire protection. Excuse me. So you get our police and fire protection, and the extra layer of city services that gets added onto that as well. So that's the individual property owner's choice. So I can't say that there's a certain number, but that's something the city has been actively working on, is filling in what we would call the donut holes.
Oh, I gotcha.
And I think that practice will continue, because one of the things I know that drives our sanitation workers crazy is you may go down a street and there's 10 houses on it, and 3 are in the city and 7 are in the public service district, or vice versa. And you have some redundancy there with 2 trash trucks coming on 2 different days to pick up. And so we would love to have those folks annexed into the city. And it creates just a continuity. But some folks enjoy living in the unincorporated county, and that's their prerogative, and that's just kind of how it goes.
How it goes. In 20 seconds, Councilman, how have the development standards changed for the city of Charleston in the past 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the main one is the stormwater manual. We adopted the strictest stormwater standards easily in the state, if not in the Southeast. And so that standard made it much harder to just develop what we would call non-porous surfaces. Because that creates much more water runoff, which the system can't necessarily handle. So it provided for that a site, instead of proving that the site wouldn't flood, it has to prove that it doesn't make the watershed worse. And I think that mentality flip has done a lot for how we look at stormwater management. And so that's probably the biggest change. The other one was everyone said it was a long time coming, but banning slab on grade building in the 100-year floodplain, that or what is commonly referred to as fill and build. Right. So us banning that, was a huge step. So, the residential neighborhoods that get built, if you are doing slab on grade, it can't be in the 100-year floodplain. So, I think that those two are probably kind of the hallmarks of really trying to be responsible, going forward in the future. Because I think that was one of the things that just, it kind of got lost in as the city was growing, and there's a lot of development pressure. But I think we've seen now that unfettered development has its challenges, and so the city has responded with some more restrictive codes. And I think you'll see, coming up, that this zoning code rewrite will be the largest single change in like 60 years to how the city approaches development, because there's some aspects of the zoning code that haven't been touched since the 1950s.
City of Charleston Councilman Karl Brady Jr., thank you for your time here on Quintin's Close-Ups again.
Thank you, Quintin, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
Yes, thank you very much.